My captors laughed as they loaded me onto the boat, the Yuan-Ti kicking me as I landed on the deck. How could I have let this happen? I have to get this information through to the Order. The cult needed to be stopped. Welcome to another tale, where the dice roll ends and the story begins. I was tied up and gagged, which I can understand. I had been insulting them for an hour. I had no idea where they were taking me. Just the worst kind of luck in being in this situation. It was late afternoon when I saw what could be trouble far ahead in the swamp. 2 canoes coming straight for the Yuan-Ti boat. I wanted to shout out, but the gag and a boot to the back stopped that effort. All I could do was hope now. As the 3 boats closed, the left canoe swerved across the path of our boat. A bolt flew from what looked like a rogue crouching in the front. The bolt found a home in the lead Yuan-Ti seated in the front of our craft. It caused him to shout and lean back, making the boat rock in the shallow waters. As the canoe came closer, an orc barbarian threw a javelin. It flew over the Yuan-Ti head. If it had hit him, he would have been launched from the boat. The barbarian looked angry with his first throw, so he drew another and did not miss this time. With a sickening thud, the second javelin hit the Yuan-Ti in the side, causing more pain to be shouted out. I smiled behind the gag. If I could get free, my mission was not lost. Tia was with me. I tried to move my hands out of sight, trying to loosen the hold of the bindings, but they would not budge. Yet. The Yuan-Ti flew into action, bolts flying from their short bows, all firing at the attacking canoes. One hitting the barbarian, which I can now see, was wearing a sombrero, I think they are called. The rest of the shots flew away into the swamp, giving me more hope of being rescued by this mysterious group. A turtle monk stood up in his canoe off to the right. He ran deftly along the rail to the front, balanced on the bow, and started throwing weapons at the Yuan-Ti. The rocking of the boat saved the Yuan-Ti, though. I gritted my teeth, willing the missiles to hit, but alas, they flew into the swamp around us. The rogue leapt into the air, sunlight gleaming off what looked like metal arms. He was flying over the missiles thrown by the monk. He somersaulted, cape billowing, to land on our bow right in front of the Yuan-Ti leader. Somehow, mid-flight, he had drawn his rapier, and on landing, plunged it deep into the Yuan-Ti's chest. How did this not kill him? As the sword struck home, the first attacking canoe crashed alongside. A huge gnoll swung a massive greatsword, cutting into the leader. As the gnoll swung and the sword bit, he reversed his grip and swung again, drawing a red line across his target. But the Yuan-Ti leader remained, snarling and writhing in pain. All of the arriving group were now trying to take down this formidable foe. The Yuan-Ti leader was badly wounded, but still fought amongst the barrage of attacks. A female elf swung her weapon, but the shillelagh narrowly missed. Again the sway of the boat saving the Yuan-Ti. The orc swung a huge great axe, missing caused by the boats crashing together. With a tusked grimace he swung back again, gaining a glancing blow on the Yuan-Ti. I was furiously trying to get my hands free to help this group. My weapons lay just in front of me, but just out of use. My bonds refused to give. Then one strand seemed to fray. My eyes widened as I realized I could get out. All attempts at hiding my fight against the bonds were now gone. I just needed to twist here. My captors fought back, scimitars drawn and bolts flying from those out of reach. They managed to hit some of the group, but the gnoll barbarian took most of the damage, being at the front, arrow after arrow hitting him. The Yuan-Ti, used to fighting on boats, seemed to ignore the ebb and sway. The rocking decks did not alter their aim. whereas the attacking group could not seem to adjust for the different style of fighting on the water. The monk punched the lead Yuan-Ti. How the leader still stood made me fear that my captors would overwhelm the group, and I would never get free to complete my mission. The metallic rogue drew his rapier back and thrust, but the experienced Yuan-Ti let the rapier fly wide, using the bolt to roll on the water as he smiled. He must have noticed the uneasy fighting style his attackers had. He understood now that they had home advantage against these fighters. His smile was short-lived. The Gnoll barbarian, seething with rage, took him down with a wide-arc swing of his greatsword, then let out a cackle. Filled with rage and relief at the same time, the Gnoll's eyes narrowed as he regained his composure, and rage then turned at the female Yuan-Ti on his right. He opened his mouth wide and bit her, his snapping jaw causing a devastating injury. His teeth sank deep as he shook his head to cause as much damage as possible. The rogue had taken most of the lead Yuan-Ti's fury. He looked tired and injured, which is when the arrow from the rear Yuan-Ti hit him hard. I thought him dead from such a shot, until a faint green glow emerged around him. The same glow seemed to be surrounding the elf female. The rogue looked up and with a deep breath seemed energized again, renewed. As the glow faded, the elf lowered her head and started forward. It seems they have a druid amongst them. Interesting. The rogue, smiling, started up the boat towards his next target. The orc barbarian brought his great axe down over his head, nearly splitting the female Yuan-Ti in half, and she was no more. 2 captors left to go, and I would be free. As that thought realized in my head, my bonds fell to the floor. My struggling had worked, and now I could fight. I stood, quickly grabbed my weapons from the floor in front of me, and turned towards my remaining captors. Vengeance and freedom would be mine. The monk flew over me as I turned, seemingly flying, striking the female Yuan-Ti behind me twice. His hands moved so quickly that the Yuan-Ti could not block. He landed and then with a backspin withdrew out of the reach of reprisal, infuriating the warrior. The Gnoll rushed past as the monk landed, swinging his greatsword twice, both deft strikes quickly killing the Yuan-Ti. And in a fit of rage, the Gnoll turned and bit the last remaining Yuan-Ti captor. The Yuan-Ti panicked and struck back, his scimitar bouncing off the Gnoll. In frustration, he decided to return the favor and bit the Gnoll, his teeth sinking into his flesh as the Gnoll yelped. The Yuan-Ti, snarling and biting down as hard as he could, seemed to stop, the pressure releasing from the Gnoll as he was suddenly covered in what seemed like spores. Without turning, I knew the druid was behind it, her hands deftly creating the spell. The orc, seeing his opening, joined the fray, his great axe a blur, striking many times. A voice behind me asked if I was all right, as hands took the gag from my mouth. My anger and surprise got the best of me. The evil rose within me as I spat a reply of, "I'm fine," and I turned back to my captor. This time, I let the evil come unhindered. Black feathered wings emerged from my back. My eyes on my neck's blink turned from their normal purple to onyx, dark and unreadable. I stalked towards my prey, raising my crossbow and firing a bolt that grazed the Yuan-Ti's head. He looked at where the bolt had come from and seemed to turn pale, looking at me. I had reloaded before the first bolt struck him. Without stopping or taking my eyes from my last captor, I raised the bow and fired. The second bolt again just grazed his head. I kept approaching to get my hands on him, rip him to pieces, the torture and abuse during my captivity seething through my veins. But before I could, from nowhere, the monk appeared. drew his arm back incredibly fast, and threw a life-ending punch into his face. Lifeless, and seemingly in slow motion, he fell out of the boat and into the swamp. My anger and rage started to dissipate. I started the breathing exercises, slowing everything down, and I regained control. My thoughts of Tia calming me. Justice had been served. Tia would approve. I relaxed. My eyes returned to normal, and my wings were hidden again. I approached the knoll, and with a nod and a smile, I reached into myself and brought forward healing energy. I watched as his wounds healed, and he took a deep breath. "Thank you," I whispered. The group introduced themselves. The orc was called Kalgrax. He wore a sombrero as a disguise, but I'm not sure it works. The gnoll was Nobby. I was not overly sure he was looking at me most of the time, but he seems to have either a good sense of humour or is not very bright. The turtle monk nodded to me as he said, "Calaplax." Very quiet, but he showed his actions speak for themselves. The elf Nita softly said hello, and the rogue Sammy was actually metal. I believe he is warforged. They asked me how I came to be here. I felt I could tell them. They seemed to be good people, and I needed help to accomplish my mission. The report had to get through to the Order. "I'm on the trail of stolen treasure, which brought me towards Castle Naerytar. I have been tasked with finding out what the cult of the dragon is up to. I've been watching and learning what I can of the occupants. The castle itself has high walls and a swamp moat occupied by crocodiles. It has high towers and guards of the cult walking the battlements. It is very hard to get to without being seen. The castle has an observatory at the top as well, a large broken dome, which I am unsure of its use. There is only one entrance, heavily guarded by bullywugs. The occupants of this fortification are in disarray. It is shared by the cult of the dragon, a band of bullywugs, and a lizard folk tribe. There is a definite order to the groups, a strength-led hierarchy. The cult stood at the top, above the bullywugs, who wanted the castle for themselves. But due to them being weaker than the cult, in turn they take out their frustrations on the lizard folk at any opportunity. The cult of the dragon has an elf called Dralmora Born Grey. He's dressed in purple armor. I believe this denotes leadership, or very high to the top of the pecking order within the cult. From the symbols he was wearing, I suspect him of being a member of the Eldrith Valuthra, a group of elf supremacists dedicated to removing humanity from Faerun. The actual numbers of the cult I could not make out. The bullywug are frog-like creatures. Their leader, Farblex Spatagu, seems to have an agenda towards taking over the castle. I cannot ascertain why, but due to the strength of the cult, it's near impossible. He is relentless in his attacks and bullying of the lizard folk. He sees them as beneath the bullywugs and wants them gone. The lizard folk, I think, are led by Snapjaw, the chief of the Scaly Death tribe. They are the weakest faction occupying the castle. The Scaly Death tribe comprises of 80 lizard folk warriors, both male and female. About half of them are in the vicinity of the castle at any given time. They live in reed huts around the grounds of the castle. I was on my way to report this to the Order in Waterdeep when I was mobbed by a Yuan-Ti hunting party. They told me they too were headed for the castle, following the trail of a black dragonborn. The Order of the Gauntlet had also sent them to complete a mission. They were tasked with disrupting and investigating the cult of the dragon. I was infused with more hope hearing this. Tia has brought us together to bring justice and eradicate this evil from the land. They offered me a place in their group to see our missions through, which I happily accepted. Working with them, we will have a better chance at foiling the cult of the dragon. As we spoke, far out to the north, another canoe approached, quietly guiding straight to us. I could make out their shapes at a distance, and I recognized the lizard in the front, who raised his hand in greeting. Once they were closer, I was sure it was Snapjaw. Initially, he was worried we were there to cause trouble, but we reassured him we offered no harm to him or his people. We were just travelers who had been attacked by the Yuan-Ti. We asked him about his situation, hoping he would tell us of the events at the castle. He told us of the cult and what was happening around his home. The humans, which we took to be the cult, had made them collect boxes of items and deliver them to the castle. He also mentioned that the cult were interested in the cellars and the observatory of the castle, although he did not know why. He had seen them all make a fuss about the lizard folk going near those areas. The bullywugs, or as he called them, frogs, wanted the castle for themselves. He hated them. They had been persecuting his people for a long time, and being proud warriors, they were outnumbered, and without their leader, they could not hope to shrug off the oppression. The bullywugs had killed their shaman, so they had no spiritual guidance to help them. We asked if, with our help, we could help them be strong enough to stand up to the frogs. He thought for a while, slightly unbelieving, but there was also a small glimmer of hope that glinted in his eyes. He said finally, maybe something could be done. We should talk further. He invited us to come visit his settlement in the castle grounds, assuring us we would be safe amongst his people. As a group, we decided to go, as we could gather more information and maybe infiltrate the castle itself, all while helping Snapjaw and the lizard folk. So we took the canoes and followed Snapjaw to his home. On arrival, we were immediately challenged by lizard folk guards. They spoke in Draconic, which I have an understanding of. Snapjaw told them we could be the answer to their prayers, which they replied, "We hope so, but it can mean death to us all if you are wrong." The guards, although wary, walked away, leaving us to follow Snapjaw. He took us to the large longhouse situated not far from the castle entrance. As we walked, I noticed that the lizard folk, despite their primitive appearance, were actually masters of using their surroundings to their advantage. The huts were all made of woven reeds, as were the ropes and baskets. Their traps, everything was made from swamp matter. They were truly ingenious. We sat and ate with him comfortably inside the long hall. He told us that their leader had been killed by the frogs, so they had no one to look after them. He expressed that if they had one, they could fight the frogs and win. The frogs, on the other hand, relied very heavily on their leader. If he was killed, the lizards could rise up and get rid of them and stop the persecution of his people. As a group, we discussed it, finally agreeing to help kill the frog leader. He lived in the cellar of the castle, so getting to him would be difficult. We devised a plan to sneak in with Snapjaw and a few of his warriors carrying boxes, which the lizards did every day, then attack and get into the cellar to kill the frog. Once dead, we give the lizards a signal, and they fight off their oppressors. Tia would be proud of this action. Justice would be done for these people. Snapjaw agreed. We took to our beds, getting the rest we needed to enter the castle at first light. This chapter is closed, but the campaign is far from over. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the dark, leave a like to keep the archives open. Subscribe so you don't miss where the path leads next. There is always another tale.